Hey, this is Buddy Blake here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Happy Monday to you and your family. I just wanted to reach out and do a quick market overview. The Wilmington market continues to be extremely busy. Now that spring weather is coming around, we're seeing an enormous number of folks coming to the area, which is great. Of course, our inventory still is to be very tight. But we are starting to see more inventory come online. We're starting to see leveling in the Wilmington area. We've already seen inventories beginning to grow just a little bit in Carolina Beach and Curie Beach. The Pender County, Hampstead area still is just very short. And again, Wilmington is quite short. We only have about 238 homes available. Unlike other times this time of year, we might have 1,600, 2,000 homes available. But a lot of folks want to move here. And I want to talk to you about the market that we're in. And of course, the good news is, folks, even though you may paying more than you might would in a normal market, the cost of money is so cheap right now. And also, anybody moving to our area has just likely crushed it on the sale of their home. So you're basically moving some of that equity from your other home into your new home at a much less interest rate for the next 30 years. So it's a great time to buy. It's an absolute perfect storm for housing. So here's the way I'm going to make some recommendations. And we just had a big team meeting today because we're seeing a number of buyers who haven't bought or sold real estate in the last number of years, but they're still working on the premise of, hey, they're asking 300. We're going to go in and offer them 275, see how we end up. That model doesn't work right now. And, I'm not saying it's a faulty model. I'm not saying anything negative about your experience, but that experience is not working. And we tell folks all the time, say, listen, here's the market we're in. Whatever recent comps are that have sold, that's simply what's in the rearview mirror. That's not what's in the side on your peripherals, and it's certainly not what's in the front windshield. So where sellers are in this market, they're looking into the front windshield. So I'm looking much further down the front of them than others. But realistically, they're looking at the front windshield, which is what's on the market and what's coming on the market. And quite honestly, what buyers are willing to pay. So too many people are coming to the market and say the list price is 300. They're coming in offering 295. A little bit of due diligence money, et cetera, and they're unfortunately learning some lessons. It is not what's going to work to get a house. I'm not saying it's right the way this market is, but the current market environment is the asking price in many cases. In most cases, there's still the outliers that are just nuts. But in most cases, especially under 500 in our market, the asking price is the starting point. And that's where you need to start your conversation at. But most cases, I just got involved with a really good friend of mine that was making an offer on a property. And we were one of, my understanding, over 20 offers on the property in just a few days. And we went over asking by 25,000, a whole lot of due diligence money and all cash and super quick closing. And we didn't get it. And we still got beat out. And I thought we had a super offer. But so you just never know what's going on, because keep in mind, people that are moving from other areas, our area is so cheap. So, you can't think like you've lived here forever and you're going to try to get the best deal you can. Right now, it's just a matter of getting a house. And that's not something that anybody enjoys, because our mindset is get the best deal. But right now, it's all about future value of the interest rate and the money. And Wilmington is just likely never going to reset down to the areas it used to be. And quite honestly, it's going to be unaffordable for many areas, for many people in certain price ranges, because they're not coming back. The cost of land and the scarcity of land is just too tight. So what you do have control over is, number one, is your price. Depending on the property, listen to your realtor. Number one, definitely listen to your realtor. But don't base your price on what things have sold for 6 months ago, because that's not going to work in this market. It's going to be, think of it of more of the auction mentality, and whatever you think the most likely lowest price you can buy it for above the asking price. So now sometimes asking price will get it, and, just certainly different situations. Be glad to walk you through any situation. You got price, You've got your due diligence money. And in North Carolina, that's your non-refundable money. The seller keeps it whether you buy it or don't. That needs to be high. Don't come in with $100, $200. It needs to be, you need to probably start at 1% of the purchase price, or a little less than that. So, or maybe half of that in some cases, depending on the price range. But as you go up in price range, your percentage needs to go up too, because typically the higher price you buy, the more disposable income the buyer likely has and a source of money available. So you've got the due diligence date, you've got the due diligence time. Many sellers are not going to wait for a home appraisal. So just know that they're going to, let you hopefully do some home inspections. They're probably not going to give you much if they find anything, unless it's something extremely difficult and structural. So you've got the closing date too. That's the due diligence date. You got closing date. And it's really not a matter of when you close now. What we're recommending, if the buyer can do it, is they need to ask the question from the seller's listing agent, when do your folks need to be out by? And offer to let them stay there for a period of time. It might be days, it might be weeks, it might be several months in some cases, so that they can find something. Because the number one reason why people aren't selling their houses is because they don't know where they're going. So what if you made it easy for them and said, hey, you can stay here for 2 or 3 months after closing to give you time to find something. If you move out earlier, great. If you need to go a little longer, maybe we'll work out some, month to month rental. You got to be creative with that. Source of money. Cash is certainly the best, but don't get confused and think that just because you've got cash, keep in mind, it's all cash to the seller, whether you bring money to the closing, bring it in a bag, bring coins in, or, get a mortgage. It's the same thing to the seller. It's all a matter of the most likely to close. So just because you got cash, that only helps when everything else is equal. That means when you are the best price, when you have the most due diligence, the quickest terms, or the most favorable terms for that specific seller. That only helps in that environment. I'm going to say this also, if you're asking for closing costs and things like that, that ship's kind of sailed. So if you're doing a VA loan, FHA loan, and you need those closing costs, you may really want to look more towards new construction, where builders will still work with you because they still got to build the house. So that is really where you need to lead to there. And that's the most flexible folks out there, is the builders, which is unusual a little bit. So you got all that in there. But the other thing I'm going to tell you right now is a local lender. I'm not nothing against the big lenders, et cetera, but you need somebody that you can talk to locally, walk in the door and have to deal with. But the biggest thing is you're going to want the seller's agent, the listing agent, to be comfortable with who you've chosen, because too many times out of area lenders are trying to bring in out of area the appraisers who don't know the area, or who happen to be the cheapest appraisal that they can make money on, the lender. So you need to use a local lender that the seller's agent feels comfortable with. So you're selling who you're using as a lender to the listing agent as well as the seller, their comfort in this market. So you should be getting a very similar rate or a very competitive rate from any of the area lenders. They do a great job. We've got one in-house that does a fantastic job, Paul, but we've got a few other ones that do great jobs too, that are local, and they use local appraisers. We don't need a situation where appraiser comes in and calls up the listing agent, wants to know where the bridge to Ballhead is. Well, there is no bridge to Ballhead. You can only get there by boat or ferry or helicopter. So if an appraiser doesn't know that, they probably don't need to be doing an appraisal on a house at Ballhead Island. So anyway, use somebody local. It makes all the difference in the world. Even if you don't think it's good, it's all about what's going to make the seller feel good and the listing agent feel good. And then the other thing is, you probably are going to have to think about what happens and who's going to cover the gap if the appraisal comes in short. Appraisers are only typically allowed to use the rear view closings, but the rear view closing in this kind of market are not indicative of what the real market value of a house is or what a seller will pay for it. So I am seeing addendums being added that attorneys are preparing, where it basically said the buyer will buy this house, and the buyer agrees that if there's a shortage in the appraisal, that the buyer will deal with that. They will not walk away from the difference, and they won't ask the seller to pay for it. So you got to get creative in this market. So if this helps, I hope it does. If you'd like to have a deeper conversation, I'm happy to talk with you. And again, this goes against everything we've ever learned in real estate. Pretty much everything that we've done in the past is just out the back window for right now. But don't worry, we'll be back. But do I think people are getting in trouble right now? No, I don't think people are getting in trouble because I think they just crushed it on the house they sold and they're buying money even now at three and a quarter, three and a half, whatever the rate is. It still has a three in the front of it. And, my first house was 8 3/4, and that was in the 90s. That's not that long ago. So you're getting an incredible deal. So the value is in the long-term money. Compounding interest is the most powerful thing that man has ever created. So you're getting a great value, even if you're paying a little more than you thought you might, but you also probably got more on your house than you thought you'd get. So the housing market is strong because there's equity in the market, that we don't have the bad loans. Again, use a local lender. I think I've said that 14, 15 times. Use a local lender. Anyway, let me know if we can help in any way. And down below is more information, some links to some lenders in the area, and also links to search the available homes in the Wilmington and surrounding areas. Thank you so much. Have a great week. And if I don't see you next week because I'm going to be on vacation with my wife for our anniversary, have a great Easter and a great spring launch. Thanks.